Will you turn with me in your Bibles to the book of Genesis, chapter 31, beginning at verse 45. My brothers and sisters, I want to talk for just a few moments about the subject of forgiveness, benediction. A forgiveness, benediction. If I were to give a subtitle to the message today, the subtitle would be, Sometimes There's a Blessing in Goodbye. Sometimes there's a blessing in goodbye. My brothers and sisters, if you grew up in church, then perhaps you are familiar with this benediction, especially as it reads in the King James. May the Lord watch between me and thee while we are absent, one from another. Amen. This benediction has often been used as a way of ending worship service or dismissing meetings, prayer meeting or business meeting, in a way of people saying goodbye at the end of a time together, and without really having looked at or understood or unpacked what has happened, the purpose for which this benediction has been used, or what the benediction really signifies or stands for. And there came a shift in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s, where people began to really understand more of what this meant. And they began to get away from it, using other forms of benediction in its place, my brothers and sisters. And for many people, this benediction has been buried in the basement or stored away in the attic of biblical text, never to be touched again. We have shied away from it. But I want to say, my brothers and sisters, that this benediction is not a bad thing. It is actually a good thing. The challenge for us and the purpose for it being in the text is for us to understand when to use it and when not to use it. Let me see if I can help explain it like this. Recently, I received a set of knives. I received a knife set. Some of you all don't know, but I can cook a little bit. I can cook a little bit. And I enjoy cooking probably more than I'm any good at it. But I like to get in the kitchen and practice cooking. It's helpful for me. And so it's important, if you're cooking, to have a good set of knives that you can use to cut the various things. And you have to have knives for different materials. You don't want to use the same knife that you use to cut your vegetables, to cut your meat, et cetera, et cetera. So I got a set of knives, and I have to admit, I still have a little bit of a little kid inside of me. I know I try to act all serious when I'm here, but every once in a while I have a little bit of kid that comes out of me, and so I see all of these knives, and so the little kid in me automatically gravitates to the biggest, longest, sharpest knife in the set. And so I grab that knife out, and then I'm all of a sudden transported back to being 5 years old, and now I am in the middle of my kitchen, He-Man, the master of the universe, waving my knife around, because now I have the power. And my brothers and sisters, and as much as I wanted to go and cut everything with the one knife, I realized soon after I got finished indulging my 5-year-old fantasy that knife has a specific purpose. Now, that did not mean that I put the knife away and never used it. It just meant that I had to know when to use it and not use it unnecessarily. This benediction is the same thing, my brothers and sisters, that the forgiveness benediction, if you will, that exists in the Bible is not something that we ought never use, but we ought to understand it so we know when it is time and when it is appropriate to use it. So let me set a little bit of the stage. And I know we've talked and preached this scripture before, but just let me remind you, in case you have forgotten, what is happening that has brought us to this place in the text. Jacob is our main character in this scripture. We've been following Jacob. The Bible has been following Jacob since he was a little boy. In fact, even earlier than that, the Bible has followed Jacob since he was in his mother's womb. Jacob was the twin brother to Esau. And when Jacob and Esau's mother was pregnant with them, she felt them wrestling in her womb. She said, it felt like there are two nations wrestling inside of me. The Bible says that when they are born, that Esau is born first. He is the oldest by a matter of minutes, but he cannot be finished completely being born before Jacob's hand emerges on Esau's heel. Jacob did not want to be left behind and was upset that he could not get out first. And so he's grabbing onto Esau's heel, trying to stop Esau from being born first and get himself out. This is who we see Jacob as, my brothers and sisters, always reaching, grasping, trying to get ahead. So Esau and Jacob's relationship develops and grows, as you would imagine. Two siblings of this sort would always trying to be the best, trying to appear the best. Esau had a set of skills, my brothers and sisters. Esau was a hunter. He loved to go and kill animals and prepare delicious food from the animals that he killed. Jacob did not have that same set of skills. Jacob was not the rugged outdoorsman. Jacob was an indoor person. Jacob was his mother's favorite, while Esau was his father's favorite. And so the time comes when Esau, unable to find game, finds himself hungry, and he says, "Man, I'm going to die if I don't get something to eat soon." And Jacob says, "Well, I've got something to eat in the kitchen, but it's going to cost you something. I'm not just going to give up the food that I've worked for free. You've got to give me something in exchange. You've got to give me your birthright." And Esau says, "What good is a birthright to me? If I die, sure you can have my birthright." And so for a bowl of soup, Esau gives up his birthright to Jacob. And so, my brothers and sisters, the pivotal moment comes when it is Isaac's turn to give the blessing to Esau as the firstborn. So Isaac calls Esau in and says, "I'm getting old now, and I don't know when I'm going to die, so let me give you the blessing that passes down from the father to the oldest child, the same blessing that my father gave me when I was younger. Let me pass it on to you. But first, won't you go out and do what you do best? Won't you go find an animal and kill it and prepare it and bring it to me so that I can have something to eat?" So Esau goes out to hunt, preparing to receive his father's blessing. While he's away, Isaac's wife overhears the conversation and says to Jacob, "We have our moment right now. Your father has sent Esau out to go cook, to go find food, to kill it and cook it, so that he can give him his blessing. I'm having people cook up food for you right now. I want you to go in and pretend like you are your brother. Your dad is so old that he can't see anyway, so he doesn't know the difference between you. I just need you to practice your best Esau impersonation that you can and go in and receive your father's blessing." And so Jacob goes and he realizes that Esau's arms are hairier than his, and he can't grow any hair on his arms, so he takes the skin of a dead animal and puts it on his arms to make it feel hairier than it is, and he gets the food and he comes and brings it to his father and deceives his father and receives his brother's blessing. Now Esau comes back, my brothers and sisters, and Esau has found the game, and he has killed it, and he has prepared it, and he's ready to receive his father's blessing. And he comes in, and his father says, I just blessed you. And he said, no, you didn't bless me, because I've been out hunting, and I just got back. I was doing what you told me to do, and now here I am to receive the blessing. And then he said, well, who was it that I blessed? And Esau gets angry, and he realizes that his brother has tricked him once again, and so he swears, I'm going to kill my brother as soon as my father dies. Because he's tricked me one too many times. Well, his mother hears it, and his mother, worried that her favorite son is going to end up in a battle that he cannot win with his more rugged older brother, says, it's time for you to go somewhere else for a while, so let me send you off to my brother's house, your uncle Laban. Laban will take care of you. Won't you go to Laban's house? And then she goes back to her husband Isaac and says, you know what? Jacob is getting about that age where it's time for him to find a wife, and I don't like any of the women around here. If my son marries one of these women, I'm going to die. So won't you send him to my brother's house where he can find one of the women out there? They have so much more sense than the women around here do. So won't you go send them around? And Isaac, not wanting to fight with his wife about this issue, sends Jacob off to Uncle Laban's house. And Jacob gets to Uncle Laban's house, and no sooner does he get there than he falls in love with the first woman he sees, not realizing that it is his Uncle Laban's daughter, which would be his cousin, but they had different rules about that than we do, so don't judge him for it. It's his cousin, Rachel. And so he falls in love with Rachel and reaches an agreement with his uncle that says, I'm going to work 7 years in order to marry your daughter Rachel. And so he works 7 years, but Uncle Laban is a little bit of a slick one himself. My brothers and sisters, and if I have some uncles, and I know no matter how slick I try to be, I can't outslick the old slick ones. My brothers and sisters, maybe you got some old slick ones in your family, and you know what I'm talking about. So Uncle Laban is a little bit slicker than Jacob, and he agrees, and he goes through with part of his agreement, but instead of giving him Rachel, he gives him Rachel's older sister, Leah. And then Jacob said, what happened? I was supposed to marry Rachel, and you gave me Leah. And he says, well, we've got a custom in this family. I don't know how y'all do it over there, but in this family, the youngest daughter does not get married before the oldest daughter does. And so since the oldest daughter wasn't married, you have an obligation to take the oldest daughter. Now I'll make you another deal. It doesn't have to end like this. You can have both daughters. I'll give you two for an additional 7 years. And so for 14 years, now you can have both daughters marry and begin to establish your family that way. So Jacob does, he agrees to the deal, works 14 years, has now 2 wives, and now he has 2 wives, my brothers and sisters. Jacob realizes, well, if I'm going to have 2 wives and 2 families, I've got to be able to provide for my family. And so he says to Uncle Laban, look, here's the issue. I have 2 wives, but I don't have the resources to be able to provide for them, and I really don't want to live here forever. So why don't I work for another 6 years, and during that time, that part of the flock that I tend will become mine, and part will remain yours. And I'll make sure that your flock continues to grow and be strong, and then I will take some from my flock as well, so that when it's time for me to go, I will have something to be able to feed my family with. And so they agreed to that, my brothers and sisters. And then there's a rumor that goes around the circles that Jacob is mismanaging Laban's flock, that Jacob is making his flock grow intentionally while Laban's flock gets weaker and weaker. And so the people who are working with Jacob begin to grumble against Jacob, and Jacob realizes that the situation at Uncle Laban's house is not the beneficial situation it once was. And so and even God says to Jacob, it's time for you to get out of here and go back to your homeland. And so Jacob decides that he's going to make a run for it. And so late at night when Uncle Laban is asleep, he gathers his wives together, gathers his sheep together, and he escapes quietly in the middle of the night. Laban wakes up the next morning to find Jacob gone with his daughters and his grandchildren. And Laban is upset. Laban gathers his men together to go and find Jacob, seemingly with the intent to do Jacob harm, except for God speaks to Laban. And God tells Laban, I've got a plan for Jacob. So be careful of what you do to him. Whether it be good or whether it be evil, watch yourself. Because Jacob is mine. So Laban catches up with Jacob. And they begin to have a conversation. And Laban says, Jacob, you've disappointed me. You've taken advantage of my kindness and my hospitality. I've given you the best that I have. I've given you my 2 daughters. I've given you half my flock. And then you run away in the middle of the night. And not only that, you've taken one of the most prized possessions from my house, the statue that signifies the God that our family worships. I'm disappointed in you, Jacob. And Jacob said, hold on, Uncle Laban, now let's get the story straight, because it hasn't all been peaches and cream working for you now. I worked for one wife, you pulled the okie doke on me and gave me the other, so I agreed to your plan to work for the second wife. Then I worked in your field, and it didn't matter whether it was hot or cold. I worked out there outside all of the time. You didn't give me food. I had to take care of my own food and accommodations. There was no room and board. I had to pay for that. And if a sheep ended up missing, it didn't matter if I was working or not. You blamed it on me, and I took the responsibility for it. So don't act like you've been all generous and everything. There's been some issues on both sides. Now you can look through the camp and see if you found your statue, but nobody here took it. And if somebody did, you can take them out and kill them for all I care. And so Laban goes and he searches, not knowing that his wife, the wife that he really loves, Rachel, is the one who took the statue. Rachel, being both Laban's daughter and Jacob's wife, has a little tricksterism in her herself. And so she decides that she's going to sit on the statue and hide it. And then when her father comes into her tent, she says, Daddy, I'm sorry, I'm not standing up to greet you, but it's that time of the month for me. And so I don't want to stand up right now. And Uncle Laban, being as a lot of guys are when it comes to that situation, they just don't even want anything to do with that. You just say, okay, that's fine, that's all right. We don't just and Uncle Laban goes on his way. And so there's this final showdown between Jacob and Laban, and they've got to figure out how they are going to settle this, my brothers and sisters. And Laban, remembering the conversation that he has with God. And I also think Laban remembering now that Jacob's wives are his daughters. Uses the wisdom that has come with his age. It says, Jacob, the path we are going down is going to lead us both into trouble. We can't continue this relationship the way it is. You always trying to get one up on me, and me always trying to get one up on you. I could, if I wanted to, come here and do you serious harm. I have the power to hurt you, the power to kill you. But I can't do anything to you that won't hurt me. Because your wives are my daughters, and your children are my grandchildren. So let's make this agreement. I'm going to turn around and I'm going to go home. And you keep going to your home. And we're just going to make an agreement that we will never see each other again. And I won't come after you to do anything to you. And you won't come after me to do anything to me. And I'm going to trust you that you're going to do right by my family. And let God be the witness between us. My brothers and sisters, it's an interesting take on forgiveness. This isn't the Hallmark, Disney, Tyler Perry, Tim Jakes family movie that we would go see. The ending is Laban and Jacob agree that they have to go their separate ways. And it is this that I want to wrestle with for a moment, my brothers and sisters, because it helps, I think, remind us the purpose of both relationship and forgiveness. And so the first thing I want to lift out of this text, my brothers and sisters, is to understand that that relationships are not ends in and of themselves, but they are designed to be means to an end. That every relationship in our life, beginning with our relationship with God, is designed to help bring us to the place where God ultimately has for us to be. That we believe that our best selves, that who we are at our best, is the person that God has created and called us to be. And that the journey from where we are to that place is a long and sometimes treacherous journey. A lot of things happen along the way. Many of those things outside of our control. Those things impact us and sometimes make it harder for us to get to the place or be the people that God is calling us to be. But that God doesn't cause us or force us to go through this journey by ourselves. But God puts us in relationship with people to help us along the way. That is one of the reasons, my brothers and sisters, that we come to church every Sunday, that we gather here together. It is not just so that we can worship God or give God praise, because truth be told, you can do that in your house by yourself. It is because that God is calling a group of people together to be in relationship with one another, because you can't be the person that God has called you to be by yourself. You can't do it alone, my brothers and sisters. I just want to remind you that you need somebody. You need somebody along this path, my brothers and sisters. And God has placed us in family and in fellowship together so that together we can help each other to be the people that God is calling us to be. That I need you and you need me. We've got to do this thing together, my brothers and sisters. And so every Sunday we come is to remind ourselves and encourage one another so that we can get there together. The story is told, my brothers and sisters, the story is told of a researcher who goes to a tribe in Kenya. And as he's in this tribe in Kenya, he is talking to a group of children, and he has a bowl of delicious fruit. Delicious fruit from the land. It's a rich bowl full of all of this fruit, and he gets the children together and he says, we're going to play a game. And the game is, I want all of you to start at that tree over there, and I want you to run to this tree over here, and whoever makes it across first will get this bowl of delicious fruit. And so the kids all get together and they start at that tree, and they huddle up for a second, and then the researcher says, all right, ready, set, go. And the most amazing thing happens, my brothers and sisters. The kids do not take off trying to run by themselves. They don't try to trip or grab or hold on to each other trying to get there first. They grab hands and they run across together, and they run to the finish line together holding hands. And the researcher says, why is it that you held hands when one of you could have had this whole bowl of fruit for themselves? And the oldest of the group speaks up and he says, we have a principle here that says that we are all in this together, and I can't be happy if my brothers and sisters are sad. And so none of us could enjoy the fruit unless all of us enjoy the fruit. So we had to cross the line together. That's the way God has designed us, my brothers and sisters, that we are not in this Christian race alone, but we are in this to help each other, to grab hand in hand, and to make it across together so that when somebody falls, cross, we pick them up and say, you're in this with us. We're going to get across this thing together because God has called us as a community, my brothers and sisters. And the relationships in our lives are all to be helping us to get to the place where God has called us to be. The danger becomes when the relationship stops serving its purpose. Sometimes the relationships in our lives, be it brother or sister, sometimes father or mother, sometimes friend, sometimes spouse or lover, sometimes church member, sometimes pastor. The relationships in our lives sometimes stop serving the purpose that God has designed for them. And rather than helping us get to the place that God is calling us to be, they get in the way. Be clear about it. God had a purpose for Jacob and Laban's relationship. There was some growing up that Jacob needed to do. There was some establishment, getting on his feet and getting solid that Jacob needed to do. Somebody had to help fill the gap of Jacob's father and his older brother while he was away to help him grow and develop. There was a purpose for that relationship, but at some point the relationship did all it could to achieve that purpose, and they had to separate. You all know I'm a basketball fan, so I grew up, and one of my favorite teams growing up was the Los Angeles Lakers. And I remember Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and James Worthy, and that great Lakers team. And Pat Riley was the coach. And it was a sad day for me when Pat Riley decided to walk away from that team. And they said, why would you walk away from this team that you had so much success? And he said, sometimes a team just stops listening to his coach. Sometimes I said all I can say, and there's just nothing I can say to motivate them anymore. And so rather than being there and trying to yell and stomp my foot and bang my fist and trying to get them to listen to me, I just decided I need to move on and let them have somebody else that can come in and speak to them. And sometimes it's just time to give the benediction. Sometimes it's time to say, the Lord watch. Now, my brothers and sisters, the other point I want to emphasize in this is that in order to, it's not just a benediction, I want you to understand, but I told you this was a forgiveness benediction. Which means that not only do we say goodbye, but there is a way that we have to say goodbye. And that's the second point in this, my brothers and sisters, is that there are times when we have to stop keeping score. There are times when we just have to throw out the scorecard, throw out the notebook. You know the notebook you have, maybe you don't have it. I have a notebook. It's not a physical notebook, it's a notebook I keep in my mind, and it's a notebook that I tally up what everybody's done to me. I keep a note of what they've done. I'll remember that. That's in my notebook. I file it away in my notebook. And sometimes when I see people, I remember that notebook is in the back of my mind, and I'll be like, I remember. God bless you. It's good to see you. I remember what you did. And I'm not going to do anything about it today, but I'm going to get you one day. Don't worry about it. Amen. Because the notebook is there, my brothers and sisters. But the forgiveness means that we throw that notebook out. And that we let it go. There's something in the back of my mind that tells me I have the right to get you back. Where forgiveness says, I give up that right. I choose to take that notebook page and rip it up and throw it away and forget that it was ever there. And sometimes, because of the toxicity of the relationship, ripping up and throwing it away means that I have to separate myself from you. Because if I just rip it up and throw it away and stay here, we're going to get back into the same pattern again. But in order for me to be the person that God is calling me to be, and honestly, in order for you to be the person God is calling you to be, I've got to rip it up and walk away. I want you to notice this, my brothers and sisters. When Laban leaves Jacob, Jacob walks away from Laban almost literally into the arms of God. As Jacob walks away, he has this moment where he has left Laban and is heading home. He hears that Esau is heading in his direction. And in that moment, in between Laban and Esau, Jacob wrestles with God. And I want to make the point, my brothers and sisters, that as long as Jacob was in Laban's house, he might have been able to hear what God was saying, but he could not have ever wrestled with God because he was too close to Laban for God to get in there and wrestle with Jacob the way he needed. Laban had to walk away from Jacob to give Jacob the space to be able to wrestle with God so that God could work that stuff out in Jacob. I'm willing to bet, my brothers and sisters, if you sat down and had a conversation with Laban, Laban could have told you at least some of what Jacob needed to work on. Laban could have told you what Jacob needed to do, but Laban could not get Jacob to the place where Jacob needed to be. Only God could do that, and for that to happen, Laban had to get out of the way. And in order for Laban to leave, Laban had to realize, I'm not going to be able to sell every store. Some things I've just got to let go. I believe in this text, my brothers and sisters. Laban knows that his statue is in the tent. He can't find it, but he knows that it's there. But Laban has to walk away and say, I'm willing to let that go, because there's something bigger at stake here. And so I'm going to walk away with a clean slate. I'm going to let you walk away with a clean slate. We're just going to say, may the Lord watch. He has to let go of the scorecard and rip it up and walk away. And it's hard to do sometimes, my brothers and sisters. It's hard to give up our right to get even. It's hard to give up the memory of what people have done. But the truth is, when we carry it, we're really not doing anything to the other person. All we're doing is making it harder for ourselves. Trying to grow in the Christian life while carrying this tally list of what other people have done to you is like trying to swim across a river carrying a load of bricks. You may be able to make it, but it's going to take you a lot longer, and it's going to be a lot harder than if you just let those bricks go and pay attention to the swimming. My brothers and sisters, we've got to be able to let these things go, not because of what it's going to do for somebody else, but because of what it does for us. Because when we are able to let the tally card go, we're able now to focus on what's really important. To focus on ourselves and who God is calling us to be. To focus on the relationships that are around us, that are actually building us and strengthening us. We're able, my brothers and sisters, to emerge and be the people that God has called us to be. And remember and celebrate that these relationships actually can serve a purpose. Now, the tricky thing is, how do we make a decision about when to stay, when to go, when a relationship is worth investing in, when it's not? So I went to a very deep theological place to find an answer to this. I went to the movie Baby Boy. You remember the movie Baby Boy? It was what's the dude's name? Tyrese. Yeah, y'all know it. It's Tyrese. And so Tyrese plays his character. His name is Jody, and then it's his girlfriend. What's her name? Taraji Henson. Taraji Henson plays Yvette, I think it is, right? It's Jody and Yvette. And Jody and Yvette have this really, really tumultuous relationship. Don't act like I'm the only one that's watched the movie. Jody and Yvette have this really tumultuous relationship. And it gets so bad at one point that Yvette goes to Jody's mom to try to get advice. While Jody's mom has come to this place where she's trying to create more peace in her life and has this garden that she's building out back. So she's out there working in her garden, and Yvette comes and says, I can't stand your son Jody. Jody's getting on my nerves, all this stuff. And she says, listen, she says, loving men, and I would change this just to say that loving people in general, can be one of the greatest things in the world. That there are times when it can make you feel really alive to be in a good and healthy relationship, no matter what the relationship is. There are times that being in a relationship can make you feel good and alive and feel like this is what it means to really be a person, to be the person that God is calling me to be, is to be in a relationship with this group of people. But there are also times when it can make you feel really low, like the lowest thing God ever created. She says, Jody isn't giving you enough of what you need to love him when he is at his worst. That's when you know you need to walk away. Because every relationship is going to have some good and some bad. But if there's not enough good to be able to sustain you, to be able to love during the bad, then maybe that's when it's time to walk away. And that's the litmus test she gives me. And I think, my brothers and sisters, God can speak to anybody. You know, I think God was speaking through this movie Baby Boy as a way of saying there are times, my brothers and sisters, when we are in relationships that is not giving us enough strength to be the person that God is calling us to be, when it is always a drain and never a benefit. Maybe it's time to say, the Lord, watch. When the people who are supposed to be protecting you are the people that are causing the most pain, maybe it's time to say, the Lord, watch. When the people who are supposed to be teaching you are the people who are leading you down the path to destruction, maybe it's time to say, the Lord, watch. When the people who are supposed to have your back are the people with the knife that always seems to find its way in there, maybe it's time to say, the Lord, watch. When the people who are supposed to be your cheering corner are the people who are saying the most hateful things, maybe it's time to say, the Lord, watch. My brothers and sisters, that in the Christian life, we have to know sometimes it's time to give the benediction on a relationship. Sometimes it's time to give a benediction on a situation. Sometimes it's just time to say, the Lord, watch between me and you while we are absent one from another. In order for me to be the person that God is calling me to be, I've got to get up out of this situation. In order for you to be the person that God is calling you to be, I've got to let you go and let this tally sheet go in order that we can both be the people that God has called us to be, my brothers and sisters. And it can seem like a difficult thing to do. It seems at times almost non-Christian, my brothers and sisters, but I would say that this is really the call of Christianity. Even Jesus, our Lord and Savior, had a disciple that he had to let go. Judas betrayed him and walked away, and Jesus had to let Judas go. Now notice that Judas wasn't the only one that did something to him. Peter denied him, but Peter chose to stay and come back. And Jesus did not chase down Judas, nor did Jesus chase down Peter. Judas chose to go and hang himself. And Peter chose to come back into relationship with Jesus. Sometimes forgiveness means I throw out the tally sheet. And I separate myself from this. My brothers and sisters, we ought not feel guilty because we haven't done God any disservice. We haven't abandoned our Christian principles. We've made a decision that the person that God is calling me to be is more important than remaining in a toxic place.